Hello, good evening. Welcome back to Celtic World Order for yet another victory lap, yet another celebration. Because, as we all know, and it says right there in front of you, it was double delight. Celtic won, Rangers nil at Hampden in the sun, just in time because it's been hammering down, back to rain again. But it was a glorious day yesterday in weather and on the pitch. The performance might not have been vintage, but the end result is all that counts. It's a double for Celtic, which maybe seemed unlikely at some points this season. And as we say all the time, it's the hope that kills them. I'm always a Steve O'Matt, and I'm joined with, and I'm glad to see he's on camera. He's got the technology back up and running. It's my bearded brother. It's the OG. It's Paddy Boy. Paddy, happy days, my man.
Hail, hail, brother. Aye, all good. Had a few people over. As I said, it was the debut for the Man Cave. Had a few folk over in there, so we had an absolute ball. I was up to about midnight last night celebrating with the next door neighbours and stuff. It was absolute carnage. Loved it.
Absolutely class. Well, I was there at the game myself. I then made my way back into town. As you'd imagine, there was a bit of train delays, but I was able to sit and bask in the sun and have a few drinks before I get myself up the road. And the continuation of the celebration kept on going as soon as I got in, as well as watching the highlights, as enjoying it. I got my usual feast of social media delight, as it was definitely, once again, pain and pleasure. So as we say, welcome everybody again. Welcome back to the show. 9 o'clock on a bank holiday weekend. So hopefully you can get yourselves in here, stay up with us late, have a wee drink perhaps, keep the celebration going and get the conversation running as we kick on through the course here. Let us know what your thoughts on the game was. Any points you want to raise, we'll try and bring in as much of them as we can and make it a very much inclusive discussion. So if you're new to the channel, or if you're already part of the channel, you're part of the Celtic World Order community, welcome back. If you want to help us out, it takes 2 seconds, costs nothing for you to do it, but it helps us out greatly. Make sure you give a wee subscribe, hit the subscribe icon. Every time we go live, every time we do an upload, you'll get notified. You will not miss a beat. If you like what you see, you like what you hear, goes without saying, give it the wee thumbs up. And if you want to help us further, extend the reach, you can share our content. You can also do that by connecting with us on X at CWPod1888. And again, you can share that content. Our handles are in there if you want to listen to our garbage when we're not on the podcast. And of course, last but not least, we're also on Facebook at Celtic World Order Podcast. That's the homework done. That's it. But there's other things to get taken care of, because I think, Paddy, as they say, make mine a double, mate. I think have a wee celebratory one right here. Double cans and an actual double for me, just to wet the whistle and get ourselves in the mood, shall we say. So,
Definitely.
Paddy, we tried to do a wee preview, didn't we? You had some gremlins, but it didn't stop us. But we were talking about it between us, and we had a wee expectation of what we were going to get in terms of the lineups, in terms of things before the game. Pretty much the lineup that we got was what we expected. We saw ourselves resting those players coming in, and your confidence was definitely high. In terms of Rangers, they made sweeping amounts of changes, actually. It was Balogun, it was Davies, it was Yilmaz who was supposed to be out, and then, of course, we've seen what we thought they'd do, similar to when they failed to beat us at Parkhead. They rammed the midfield, didn't they? But it was Sterling again. It was the return of Raskin, or Raskan if you're one of the Rangers fans, in place of the Lundstrom. And they also got in everybody's favourite TikToker, Cantwell. But it didn't do anything at all. So in terms of just to kick off, and for the start, when you got those lineups in there, obviously you were a very confident man. How was the initial feelings at the start of the day?
I'm always confident going into these things, you know me. Looked at our squad and I thought, you know what? They said exactly what they were going to do. Try and bombard the midfield. Try and overpower us in there, because they can't beat us by skill, let's be honest. So they're going to try and do the old knuckle dragging as they do and try and kick us off the ball. Do you know what I mean? And that was my fear, that they were going to overpower the midfield. Other than that, I wasn't really worried about them. I thought it would have been a lot more from us. I thought we were quite poor. We'd spoke about the team lineup, as you said, and we had mentioned Alistair Johnson, and I obviously had said about Tony Ralston possibly starting after his performance the other week. I'm glad he didn't start, because I thought Alistair Johnson was pretty special. If we had to have a decent player If I had to pick somebody for man of the match, I know Big Idah got it because he got the goal, but
Well, that's one of the ones, isn't it?
I thought for me, Johnson deserved man of the match. I thought he was outstanding. He was the kind of standout for me. So yeah, fucking buzzing about it.
Well, we'll get around to it. But listen, it's a celebration at the end of the day. We'll do as we always do. We'll always be fair. We'll always comment on what we saw with our eyes rather than what we saw with our, tinted glasses or maybe a wee bit of our heart. Because it was, as I said at the start, it was far from vintage.
Yeah.
But it was all about the ultimate result. It was always about, that final marker, that stark reminder. And sometimes, as you say, when you can't beat a team and are not at their best, then that sometimes makes it all a wee bit more sweeter, and it maybe plants further seeds of doubt. Of course, as we've seen for the off, we've got all the conspiracies and we'll dive into them and we'll even have a laugh at them as well. But let's get ourselves into the game. As we say, we were always expecting, we spoke about the early guys that we thought were going to make an impression. It was always the one on everybody's lips, wasn't it? Captain Fantastic versus the machine that is Maeda. Early on, maybe within the first 5 minutes, it looked as if it was going to be more of we've seen throughout the course of the season. I think it was maybe the first minute, maybe second minute, he burst in and he got one put across the box, which was blocked out. And then there was a second one short time after, now he chested the ball and he got in behind as well. And that was Kyogo getting mobbed out in the box. It was a positive start from us in the front foot, but that wasn't really much the narrative for the rest of the game, that was it? Because Maeda was he wasn't quite on it, was he?
No, but to be fair, he didn't have to be. Let's be honest there. As you called him, Captain Fantastic, their Hall of Famer, he was null and void, wasn't he? He was just, didn't look on it at all, looked like he didn't want the ball, looked scared every time he got it. I thought Dyson had him on toast the full game. Didn't perform to the standards that we've come to expect for the wee man since he's grown his hair. He was a bit off the game there, wasn't he? But do you know what? He done enough. Created a good few chances. The one with Kyogo, does it come off the defender first or does Kyogo get a touch? I think I've seen a few comments about it. Somebody put one up and it slowed it right down and it showed you Kyogo possibly getting a touch on the ball. So then for me, is it Ben Davies? I think it's come through the back of him.
Well, yeah, so I mean, there were shouts for a penalty. Listen, we'll get around to chats about penalties, chats about VAR and all that kind of stuff. But no, it was quite interesting. I says, we were expecting a really rapid start. And from my vantage point, if you will, in the stadium, it was a fantastic right on the halfway line at the divide. Yeah. So it was a brilliant. I got to see all of the action, see it in right good sort of clear vision. And yeah, we started quite brightly. I was thinking, here we go. This is a wee bit of what we want. I was straight down the left-hand side and taking advantage, moving it. It was quite interesting because we often talk about their defenders and, we talk about Davies, we talk about Balogun being sort of big, callous, lumbering guys. And I thought that was something throughout the course of the game that we would have really taken advantage of. But when you actually see it and break down the amount of chances, if you will, there wasn't really much in the way of our game. Like, if we compare it to the previous games, the previous Glasgow derbies, we had been absolutely knocking down the door and getting in behind it. And it was a case of not being able to convert many chances. This one, it was little chances, and it was just taking that one when it really mattered, wasn't it?
That's it. It comes down to cup finals. You know what they always say: it's anybody's game. It's a one game all or nothing. So they were going to come out. They were going to try and give us as much as they were going to get. And I think you always get that edgy period in a game like that, don't you? Especially a cup final. You always get the 20 minutes, half an hour when you're kind of trying to scope out the opposition. I felt like, although there was few and far between chances, but I felt like that was there. I felt like there was that element of doubt with both sides. That they didn't want to concede, but then you were like, all right, wait a minute, I can't give the ball away either. So they were.
We see. It was interesting what you said there, because that's exactly, whenever we sit down and we had a wee chat, and myself and Josh, and we're talking about it and sort of thinking, how are both teams going to play it? It was an all or nothing for Rangers in terms of they were either going to scrape some back credibility of their season and get maybe bragging rights, because we know they like that kind of stuff, or it was going to be exactly, or they were going to get sort of another putting down, they were going to get steamrollered, they were going to be left disappointed again, and that's pretty much the way it panned out. But what was interesting for me when we just looked at it, as you say, is both teams did appear to be quite cagey. Certainly if you look at the tail end of the game, and we'll get to the stats just a wee brief flashcard in them at the end. We obviously had, as you'd imagine, for the style of play that we've got, we had massive amounts of possession, loads of passing, but there wasn't really the same level of purpose that we've seen in previous games. As for Rangers, for me, I was quite taken back, because I want to give a wee shout out to my emotional crutch for the game. I was sitting beside an elderly gentleman by the name of Jerry, and the two of us had a great back and forward. There was an emotional roller coaster, and he turned around and says to me, and at one point, he says, "This is like playing against Livingston." And I actually thought, you know what? Good point, mate. He says, I can't believe how much they're sitting in. He says, they look like a team that are playing for a draw, or at best, looking to get us on the counter.
Yeah.
I was honestly completely stunned that they opted to go for that sort of method.
Aye, that's what it seemed to be like. Obviously, we'd said before, obviously, overloading the midfield and trying to overpower us in there, and that was it. They sat back. There wasn't that press for them. I didn't feel under attack all the time. As much as they'll tell you they were outstanding, it's the best they've ever played. If you listen to their manager, he's giving it big licks. But yeah, you didn't feel under pressure. Didn't feel like they were going to cause you anything. Like you said, they try to kind of catch you on the break and whatever else. But it wasn't, for me, it wasn't your typical end-to-end banging Glasgow derby. Do you know what I mean?
Josh says to us in the build up to it, he was discussing with me, and he says, it's been a strange week for me. He says, in terms of as a fan, he says, I don't feel like I'm in the build up to a Glasgow derby, let alone a Glasgow derby final. And for me, it was a strangely mute kind of week all the way. Obviously, these fans started to get excited near the time, but there was no real sort of juicy edge to the build up. And I think that sort of carried itself onto the pitch. And what surprised me was we were in the luxury position, weren't we, when we got the last game of the season, where we could rest pretty much half our team. So I was expecting us to be coming in at full of gusto, plenty of fresh legs, plenty of rest, and right up for it. You look at the flip side there, they were having to play guys, they were having to go back to the well again because they let us know about their injuries, but they were having to play essentially a depleted team. And you wouldn't have known that one team had a full solid rest and the other didn't. People would say, don't give them any credit, but you've just got to call what you saw in front of you. It was a very stuffy affair. We were getting our foot in the ball plenty and moving it about as we do, but there was no real massive sense of purpose. There was no real sense of cutting edge. And as you say, looking at the counter, we've seen that because they had probably the first really decent chance, which was Silva busting himself into the box and he gets a wee shot off. It was just a reminder of the way they were going to play. Aye.
You said about a lot of people are saying there, like the final third. You said there before we come on, Steve, we spoke about Rio Hatate. I feel like Rio, I'm the guy's biggest fan. Love him to bits. He didn't have anything. He was just kind of a non-entity, really. He got the ball a couple of times, gave it away a couple of times. There was no penetrating passes from him. Again, O'Reilly was quiet.
Yeah.
Just feel like they did overpower us in the midfield. Of course they did. But we kept possession. We kept the ball. We done everything that we could other than that final pass. And that for me was the only thing that really lacked in a first half and a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the first half wasn't really much going on to sell. I mean, we were really sparse and there was lots of passing around. There was a lot of sort of scrappy, losing the ball in the midfield, just quick turnovers of play. Not too much really that you could get your teeth in. As I say, they were the first ones that they got the proper first, I would say, tangible shot at goal, if you will, that actually looked like it. We kind of followed that up. Hatate was trying to find his way into that situation where the ball bounced out and he had the volley. It looked as if it was going goalwards, but it was obviously blocked out. The first real big sort of thing that we got, and I'm going to bring this in here, the first big instant, if you will, and this is also what Jim's saying, but he says, I think we were denied a Stonewall penalty. Now, the first one within the first 8 minutes, as you say, that's been sort of slowed down, it's been broken. As far as I was to believe, that one with Kyogo wasn't actually looked at. It was brought across the two of them. What kind of, I'm unsure. Let us know what you think. It looked as if Kyogo was almost off his feet, but both players are sort of sandwiched him. So maybe that's what he's talking about there. But if not, it can't be in doubt. We're talking about the handball. For me, it's the old cliche, we've seen them given.
Yeah.
Do I think it was 100% a handball? Again, without being a conspiracy theorist, I think if that was Scales doing that, I think it might, I think it might just, but I've seen commentators on the highlights and stuff saying it's in a natural position, it's out by his side, what's he going to do? Yeah, it is out by his side, but it is slightly outstretched. He almost catches the ball because he's got a curve in his hand. He's got a curve in his hand against his forearm, and he kind of almost catches the ball a wee bit before he releases it. So is that a stonewall penalty? See, at that moment in time, obviously you're sitting at home, you've got the benefits of all the replays and the angles. Were you guys shouting for that? Did you feel that was one that should have at least been looked at a wee bit closer?
There was a few choice words shouted at the TV, I'll tell you. I won't repeat them on the podcast because I think we'd get struck off. But the referee and the man who was in charge of VAR were called everything. For me, how many times you look at some of the penalties we've been given against us, handballs for behind our heads and things like this, and a slight touch at the very edge of the box and things like that. See this, mate, his hand's out for his body. It's in an unnatural position. Kyogo heads the ball, he stops it with his hand. What is that? There's no debate there. For me, that's a penalty. Why it didn't go to VAR? Why he wasn't asked to
Did it say, just for clarification for obviously yourself, I certainly can't remember at the stadium ever coming up on the screen saying that there was a VAR check for it. Was that ever alluded to in the TV? Not at all?
No.
Right.
They seen it. Celtic said, like, that's a handball, but it was never checked. It never went to VAR. And for me, it was 100% penalty.
Yeah.
We were raging. We were screaming at the TV. Honestly, it was a disgrace. And it should be called out. It's one of these things, like I've said before, I think referees should do a post-match interview and come out and say, right, show me it again. Is that a penalty? Tell us why. Tell us why it isn't. And do you know what? They got away with it. Rangers got away with one there. They really did. Because for me, it's a stonewaller.
Well, that's the thing. So says, having a look at the sort of game, there's really about sort of two maybe instances, I guess, that are going to be scrutinised, aren't they? Certainly if you want to look at the post-match takeaways from that side of the city, these are going to be the controversy. These are going to be, apparently it's corruption at its highest level, which, as I say, we can laugh that off because in terms of you had Beaton, you had Walsh, you had McLean, and again, without going down that route, these are three guys that are, undeniably, it's common knowledge, they are Rangers men. So I am really, really struggling here to get on board with that notion that these guys that are Rangers men have any skin in the game to try and do their own team over.
Yeah, do you know what it is? The players can't do it on the park. They're always cheated, they're never defeated. That's it. Serial losers once again. They can't do it on the park, so somebody's against them.
Yeah.
If you can't do it on the park, if you're not good enough, then do you know what? Accept it. Goals win games. We got a goal. You didn't. Well, you did, but you cheated to get that and all. So
yeah, well, that was the first. That was the first real big moment of controversy. As I say, for me, Nick Walsh, he's no entertaining on the pitch.
No.
There's not a sniff, as you've now clarified. As certainly in the stadium, there was no sign of that coming up. But you've just clarified that it didn't even go to, which for me is completely wild to actually. When you see it, I know that stills can make it look that way, but even myself at the halfway line. In the stands, I could see that there was an outstretched arm. You could see the way that it basically hits his arm and it kills the ball and it just drops down in front of him and it allows the advantage of to clear it away. So I'm really, really shocked, but at the same time, not surprised that we didn't see that. But, that was, we're almost half an hour into the game there and we've not had any real clear chances. It's kind of funny because it just shows you, we talk about sliding doors moments and how games could be turned on their head, because almost after it was Dessers for them that managed to get in the box. Probably, again, quite fortunate for us that they've just got one of these misfiring strikers that can't do it, because it was a glorious chance for them there. And Carter Vickers, what a tackle to block it out.
The cracking tackle. And in the build-up to that as well, there's a foul in the build-up to Dessers actually getting that chance. And the amount of chances that they got, the amount of fouls they committed without any sniff of a yellow card. We done the podcast previously when we spoke about stats, when it was like 17 tackles per yellow card or something. I think we'd worked out as something ridiculous, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was mad. And then obviously we had our captain making one tackle and getting booked. which you said before was just absolute madness.
Very
You got
strange.
guys like Diamandi in there, and
Well, you've only got to look at Raskin, you've got to look at Cantwell, the amount of fouls that
yeah,
were going on there. There was a lot of
unbelievable.
persistent fouls, but obviously that was the first one for us. In terms of, as it says, the first half, there's really not too much to write about. We had the handball, we've just covered that, with the Dessers and Silva. In that first half, they did actually have the clearer chances off us.
Yeah,
We had all the ball, we had all the control, the possession, but it was ultimately them that were getting it. I felt that, as you says, Maeda had, for me, a kind of lukewarm game. He started off, particularly in the first half, he started off quite sharp. There wasn't so much going around the right-hand side with Jamesy Forrest up against Yilmaz. Again, whether you want to do this or not, I think that for Rangers, Yilmaz was a fairly good addition for them. I think that he managed to keep us quiet down that side. But again, he's another guy who had multiple challenges that probably could have got himself booked. But we finished up the second half. We were kind of pushing on a wee bit. We were still trying to probe away for the goal, and we had the chance where there was a deflected shot for Cal McGregor that Butland managed to parry out for the corner. But then that was pretty much all she wrote, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. There wasn't much to pick for the first half, but you know what? Going in at nothing each, you thought, right, we'll kick on second half. We have a poor half, we have a good half. That's a poor half out of the way. And I firmly believed that Celtic were going to come out that second half. Possible couple of changes. I thought he'd maybe try and get a bit more direct. I thought Jamesy would maybe get pulled at that point and put on Kuhn for a bit more directness. But obviously, same squad comes out, so you're kind of waiting on the 60th minute for the changes then. That was it. It's just a matter of waiting, I think.
In terms of the first half, I mean, I certainly, if you're sitting there, I was feeling a wee bit sort of disappointed. It wasn't really what I had expected. It wasn't what I signed up for. But as we touched on right at the start of the show there, it seemed as if it was very much a game of chess, that first half. Celtic, I think, were maybe a wee bit surprised with the fact that Rangers were sitting in so much. To that end, they were almost anticipating if we maybe overcommit too much here because they're lying in so deep that we could get caught out. We got a couple of scares in that first half where the idea that we're trying to utilise it, kicking one over the top of the midfield, launching the ball up and trying to get in behind on the counter. They did get a wee bit of purchase for it, so you can maybe see why, as I say, it was like a game of chess and it was a bit sort of, touch and go. What did surprise us, and the one thing that came up there was, and I think we'll go on to and we talk about the overall performances, as you says, Cal McGregor gets booked on, I think it's about 41, 42 minutes. Yellow card, it's straight out. Now, from where I was sitting, for what I could see, Cal McGregor pretty much had kept his nose clean for pretty much the first half. There was no any particular fouls, or there was no particularly dodgy tackles, no these be sort of pulling back and anything like that. But for me, as soon as that booking went out, it completely killed his game. That was it. It was game over for Cal McGregor. And any sense of freedom that he did have was dead and buried. What was annoying me was, as we've touched on, you had guys like Diamandi, you had guys like Raskin, you had guys like Yilmaz. They had several persistent fouls, as did Cantwell. And they all managed to survive the first half with not so much as even a warning. Even Dijon Sterling had a couple of heavy tackles. But yet the first guy that's booked is essentially the guy that's orchestrating the majority of Celtic's play in the midfield. We talk about how referees can impact a game directly or indirectly. For me, the referee, he didn't have the worst of games. I don't think he did have the worst of games, but that to me was a very peculiar booking. And as we move on further into the game, it certainly killed off our purchase, our midfield, and essentially the handle on the game that we had.
Aye. That was it. I mean, Callum, he's the player that you're going to look at to break up the play. He's the player you're going to look at to get in their faces and to cause a wee bit of carnage here and there. You want that for your captain. You want that bit of bite. And I just feel like as soon as it happened, you seen him take a bit of a step back and he was like, right, wait a minute. If I've got booked for one challenge here, if I go in again, I'm off. And it seemed to be, he was preserving himself. He did get in their faces and he did a couple of nice wee slagging matches with some of them as well. And as he does, and you kind of get booked for what you say to them unless it's anything really bad. But Callum's a smart player. So he's obviously been kind of nipping at the right guys. And then, I feel like he kind of done.
I think for me, we look at that booking, we look at how it affected our overall play. I'm seeing a lot of, after the event, as you'd imagine, chat about, again, the Great Blue Hope. Oh, if we'd played Raskin more often and stuff. But I think for me, and we'll get into it when we touch on the players, we were expecting big games out of a lot of people, particularly that midfield trio. I thought
Yeah.
Cal McGregor did what he had to do in a very underwhelming first half. He didn't put a foot wrong. He was trying to do the right things. And certainly our large bulks of possession and any attempt to get it forward were all going through Cal McGregor. I was really quite disappointed, and I will get onto it at some point. I thought Rio Hatati was absolutely horrendous. I thought it was, quite frank, I'll be honest, I'll go as far as say it was embarrassing. It was one of the worst performances I've ever seen for that guy. He is a very, very talented player. That was one I really anticipated that he was going to step up to the mark. I felt as well, looking at perhaps at maybe the last game we'll see him, that you were going to see O'Reilly get out on a high. But that booking so early on to Cal McGregor just made it harder, because when you didn't have those two other guys motoring around him, it started to become a bit of an uphill battle. And guys like Raskin, guys like Cantwell, who aren't world beaters, who didn't have a particularly great game, were able to get their foot on the ball, were able to press forward, were able to cause us a wee bit of trouble, just simply because he couldn't touch them.
Aye, that was it. Like I said before, I'm Rio's biggest fan. I love the guy. I think he's an absolute outstanding player. But he was off the boil. He really was. And Matt O'Reilly, like you said, could be the last time we see him in a Celtic shirt. Heard there's even more teams now sniffing about him. There's been a lot more mentioned. West Ham, to be quoting one, even Juventus I'd heard were mentioned. So there's a lot of folks sniffing about Matt, and I thought we'd have got a nice goodbye for him. If I was a gambling man, I'd have had him on for a goal. Let's say that. Yeah, I really did. I thought the midfield was going to be our bread and butter, which it normally is, but I just feel like they were. They looked lethargic.
That's the thing. As it says, we started, the first half was much a means to an end. You were expecting to come out, you were expecting something a wee bit different, you were expecting it to be rejuvenated. Yeah. We didn't seem to really pick up from the mistakes that we were making. Rangers, on the other hand, they done something quite surprising. They rolled the dice quick, because they quickly binned Dessers, and it was Seema that came on, who we'll get on to, because we all know about they get one cut off. Yes. But he came on, and I think that was a sign of intent for them. They knew that they weren't getting enough forward and they weren't getting enough out of their chances. They had better chances. We didn't. We weren't recognising the issues that we were doing and trying to force the game and take it to them a wee bit more. And it was pretty much for the opening sort of 10, 15 minutes of that second half. It was much more of the same. It was the proverbial game of chess. It was quick turnovers of possession, teams getting about 2/3 of the way up the pitch, and they weren't even getting in it. One thing that you weren't getting out of Rangers that they typically would do all the time is they weren't shelling the balls into the box as often as they were doing. And our gameplay, which is getting it round the side and using the width, the game was very narrow. It was very condensed into the centre of the pitch, I felt.
Yeah, 100%. Feel like the wingers edging on early second half they were null and void. They weren't even really involved in the game much. I feel like with the long balls over the top, Carter Vickers, Scales, done exactly what they had to do. They were solid in there. Other than the corners, I felt like their corners coming in caused us a lot of problems, right on the top of Joe's head. The in-swingers, that must have been something that they've worked on in training, because that's quite new for them to be doing that. Normally, you just get their captain taking all of the corners and putting
them on. They go for it all the time. I
really
think when they brought on the boy Seema, it certainly gave them a wee bit more, similar as we'll get on to when we brought on Idah. It gave them more of a presence, it gave them more of a sort of focal point. Again, it wasn't causing us too much trouble, but it was a different tact for them. They'd went from being completely sort of deep in trying to defend and get us in the counter to actually try to take the game. I think they realised that neither team was committing, and they did try to shuffle it around. We didn't do it, but Seema got himself into a bit of trouble quite early on the second half, and I just want your sort of take on it, because it was right in front of me where I was sitting, where they sort of coming together. I think it was Alistair Johnson Taylor. And he was on the ground, and he had a wee kick at him on the ground, was he not? It resulted in a yellow card. Is that fair to you, or do you think there was a wee bit more in that?
The legs get wrapped up as they went in for the tackle. I think Greg Taylor's just kind of try to nudge his way out it. and I see myself a wee kind of kick out. I don't think
Sorry,
it was much.
it was actually, sorry, my bad. I think it was Johnson. It was
Was it
Johnson.
Johnson? Sorry,
Aye,
yeah.
yeah.
Aye, they went in for a tackle. He's been caught up in the tackle, and I was like, the legs are kind of tangled up there, and he's kind of kicked out a wee bit. For me, I don't think there was much malice in it. I think it was just a kind of handbags at dawn thing. Do you know what I mean? I think it was just a wee bit of aye, right, get away from me here. I thought Johnson dealt with it absolutely brilliantly. Stood up, kind of laughed it off a little bit, but he stood up the way he came up his head like this. He could have wiped him out if he was a little bit closer, which I thought was quite dangerous for the big man. But he done the right thing. He just walked away, let him get booked, and I thought that was.
It was quite surprising, though, was it not? Because I think that was one of their first bookings. Now, in the end up, there was an absolute plethora of bookings. There was over 10 bookings. We obviously get more bookings, as you'd imagine. But it was quite late on. All their bookings came quite late on. And Seema around about that sort of 56 minutes. It shows you that took how long it was for somebody to get booked, and it just happened to be him. And I think he get booked just out of stupidity. But if we look at the other guys that were persistent fouling and affecting the game more, it was quite surprising. But then after that, we get our sort of 10 minutes where there was chances they sort of both end, and obviously there was a chance to end up in the net. But before that, we saw a wee bit of what we were expecting. It was James Forrest. He was actually looking, he was trying to take the game to them. He gets up the ball, he does what he's doing, he managed to get himself burst into the box. He did get the shot off, but it was blocked. It was a wee bit more than we would hope from. And again, we weren't getting it from Kyogo. He seemed to be really lacking. We've spoke about it before, about how he wasn't really getting involved in the game. He wasn't coming looking. And it was getting to that stage where we were looking for guys like Forrest or somebody just to try and take on pot shots.
Aye. You're looking for your wingers or your playmakers to have a wee bit of magic in there. And Jamesy, as he's done many times before for us, was a guy that got the ball, burst in there, like you said. I thought Kyogo was in a cracking position. As soon as Jamesy kind of cuts the ball back, if he passes it, Kyogo's in an absolute outstanding position. And 9 times out of 10 for where he was standing, he's going to put it in the back of the net. I think Jamesy seen his name in lights, and you can imagine Joe.
Do you think that was a situation, though, where because we had failed to get in to the striker, we'd failed to sort of link up with Kyogo, and any attempts we did were always getting cut out? Do you think that was maybe, as you say, I'm seeing it at the sort of headline and these naming lights, or just thinking, we've tried to get it to Kyogo and it's not worked, let's take a shot?
Aye, it could be. But you know what these guys are like, guys. And they're your wingers, your attacking men. If they think that they can get one more touch out there and get a shot away, they're going to go for it. For me, if he's got anything else about him, Jamesy puts that in there. If it's any other game, if it's Livy, Motherwell, Kelly, whoever you're playing, he passes that all day long. But yeah, I thought it was magic. It was a bit of what we were after. A bit of kind of something to get you off your seat and go, right, here we go, right, get into them now. That's us.
Well, for me, sitting there in the stand, as I say, it was scant sort of to consolation to get excited about, but it was at least at that point you're thinking, all right, here we go, there's a chance. But as much of this game was, it was very back and forward, but nobody getting a purchase, and now we get a big second moment of controversy. We get that big one, the one that otherwise been talking about, because Rangers get the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah.
And it's on just about the hour mark, Disallowed goal. We'll break it down, we'll look into it as what it is. For me, I think that the key point I'm looking at is, yes, it's a foul. See if we take away the foul and that, let's just say it was a goal. I know it's hypothetical. For me, it was just a wee bit more of what we've done all season. You had Johnson on the line. It was to me as if he didn't know that Seema was even there. He tries to make an attempt to header it, but if you see the way he's falling, he's going to just header it in the net. Defensively, it was extremely poor, and I think we'll take it. It was very, very fortunate, was it not, that Raskin was just that thick that he decides to push Joe Hart. We really did get away with one there, did we not?
100% we get away with one. But do you know what? It's a foul. All day long, it's a foul. As soon as you put your hands on somebody inside that box, it's a foul. Doesn't matter if you're holding them, you're pulling them down, you're pushing them away, it's a foul. And at the end of the day, keepers are protected. So, like you say, yeah, it's absolute stupidity for the young laddie. And deservedly chopped off, in my opinion. That's nothing to do with green glasses. That's looking at it through the rule book, basically. you push somebody in the box, it's a foul. Simple as that.
I mean, I don't actually know what's going through his head there. Firstly, I think we've just got to look at it and analyse it for what it was. Yes, it's a foul, exactly by the letter of the law. It is a foul. It's a two-handed push. Do I think there's a lot in it? If I'm being completely honest, no, I don't. It still doesn't change it. It is a foul. It's stupid. It's cheap. I think for me, I've seen it slowed down. I've seen a couple of social media accounts saying Joe Hart's getting to it. He manages to get a fingertip on it just with the push. But I do think at the same time, we really need to be a lot more stronger than that. The fact that you've got Alistair Johnson and behind him on his blind side, you've got Seema, and in front of him, you've got Raskin. So you've got a 2-on-1 situation there straight away, which was always going to be, if the goalie doesn't get pushed, if it gets over the top of him, you know, Johnson's on to hiding to nothing, and it is poor defensively, but we can't deny it, it's a foul, and it gets called back, and they're obviously raging about it. Now, what I want to bring into sort of play here is the man on the field doesn't give that. Walsh doesn't give it.
Aye.
And again, this is where they're coming out and they're saying it's a conspiracy, it's refs getting paid off, it's this, it's that, it's the next thing. Again, I repeat, these guys are factually known to be of a Rangers persuasion.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you are going to want to try and, you know, influence a game, you're not going to cut off a goal, right? I've seen another thing as well, and this is interesting. Rangers have played us 5 times this season and they've had 5 goals cut off for various reasons, all right? So again, this just eats into this notion that they've got, that they want to spin this narrative that as you say, is always cheated, never defeated. But let's not forget, one of the staunchest, if you will, is on VAR. It's John Beaton. One of their own. He's the guy that calls it over.
Yeah.
So I really don't understand where this comes in. You can't be pushing folk in the back, 2 hands, whether it's a brief touch or whether you're decking somebody. It's completely stupid.
A foul's a foul at the end of the day. Whether it's us that do it or it's them that do it. VAR's there for a reason. The reason they've had goals chopped off is because they keep fouling, they keep making these mistakes. Whether they like to admit it or not, if you score a goal by cheating, it's going to get chopped off. And it's as simple as that. Always cheated, never defeated. It makes it so much sweeter. Remember the Christopher Julian goal?
Yes.
Again, we were whinging that was offside, and still debatable in my opinion. I think Havander's hand played him on at that time. Can't remember, but
back in the days when hands could play you onside.
Do you know what, mate? Always cheated, never defeated. It always comes down to this. They can't beat you on the park, so they're going to try and whinge off the park. I've seen that Bhoys, the boy Steely or something. He was on TikTok, and I've seen a couple of his things, and he's Rangers through and through, but all he does is whinge about them, and it's absolute ear gravy, as you like to call it, Steve. It's beautiful. Listening to him cry after the game was probably one of the highlights of my weekend.
I think his video was, "You have just witnessed a robbery."
Aye, that's it, mate. You were
robbed. It was smash and grab, but it was legal.
Exactly, that's it. I mean, we went in, we knew what we wanted, and we took it. It's as simple as that. He's fouled him. End it for me. That was it. He pushed him in the back. It's a foul. Simple.
Do you know what I think? That I don't know if this really makes much of a difference or not. What really annoyed me about that as well was straight away, as soon as the ball went into the net, Joe Hart done a beeline, and he was wrong about it. He's going like this. He's showing push, and he's going mental, and he gets booked.
Yeah.
He then gets called over, and Joe Hart is vindicated. He's shown that he is right.
Yeah.
But the booking stands. How dare you point out that I have made an arse of it?
But did the booking stand? I thought he chopped it off.
No, it stood. The booking stood.
I didn't know that. I thought he kind of rescinded the booking. I thought he went, no, you have a card.
No, if you go, certainly to my knowledge, if you go into the stats and if you go into, if you had a booking on named players to be booked, that's standing. So unless somebody can correct me elsewhere, everywhere I've seen match reports, it still shows as a Joe Hart booking. I certainly didn't see any notion that it had been rescinded. But yep, so as it says, it gets called off and that's it. But then, as they say, around about the 60 minutes mark, cometh the hour, cometh the man, because big Irish Idah comes on for Kyogo. Kyogo, as we say, he was chasing shadows. It was like punching smoke for him. He was not getting near anything. We weren't playing to the strengths. We couldn't really, we were getting our foot on the ball plenty, but there was no real precision. As we say, guys like Hatate, I just want to touch on him because I said it earlier on. We've sang his praises, and I do think that him coming back really turned our season around. You saw
100%.
that level up of quality. But for me, I'm sorry, if you're getting ratings, he's a 3 or 4 for me. It just felt that every single time he got the ball, he was either getting dispossessed or he was making a really poor pass, slacking the possession, losing the ball. He just looked like a guy that was, I'm not saying he is, but he looked like a young guy that was out his depth. It looked as if we pulled a guy up for the B squad. Mate, you're playing Rangers today, mate.
I think we'd maybe got a better chance if it was one of the kids playing against them. Rio was, for me, probably, I'd give him about a 5 out of 10. But I love the guy. I love the ground that he walks on. He's probably one of my favourite players in the squad at the minute. But yeah, I was quite happy to see the changes come. And we've spoke about Idah so many times, and I was probably one of the first ones to stand up and go, do you know what, I'm not happy with how he's played. The last game against them, I was like, he's not got it, he's not got the pace, I called him out on pretty much everything he'd done in that game, and do you know what? The big guy's come in, and he's come in at the right time for me. He's been pretty special, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing. We started to get, in terms of coming in, we were looking for that focal point, similar to what Rangers done with bringing on Sima. We were looking for that big, powerful unit up front. We were looking to try and flip up the play because our cute passing wasn't working. We were getting plenty just passing it around ourselves. It was training stuff. It was getting no real purchase. It was just pointless passing, possession for possession's sake, without any real cutting edge. Idah comes on. We try to get it through to him a couple of times, but even for the next, when he comes on for that sort of 60-minute mark, even up to about the 75, 78 minutes, nothing's happening again. The game is just a complete and utter washout. There's very little clean-cut chances for either side, and the frustrations then start to grow in, because that's when the bookings started to come out quite late. I think they had Raskin booked, he had Cantwell. Eventually, after God knows how many fouls, he got booked. We saw Taylor, he smashed them, didn't he? And he gave him a wee bit of
as well. As he was getting subbed, did he not? As he was going off the back, I think he went over and said something to Greg Taylor, thinking he was going to get
that was because Greg Taylor smashed him earlier on at the other end and then pushed him over, wasn't it?
Asked him if he wanted a shush burger.
But the frustration started to grow in the game. You could see that, certainly for us, that we were getting frustrated, even to the extent where you get James Forrest flying in and just taking somebody out. And when do you ever see that
James? Exactly. You've never seen that for James. Listen, his feet were on the ground, I'll give him his due, but you never get that for James. You never get that frustration. He's always one of the ones that's cool, calm and collected. He's always the one that'll maybe go in there with a wee kind of nick sometimes, but you never see him flying in a tackle late like that. So that was a bit of intent.
It was a wee bit.
I wanted to see that. The game needed it, though. The game needed that bit of bite about it. Somebody to turn around and grab the game with the Bhoys.
Aye.
So that was good.
No, that's the thing, as I say. So the game goes on, we're kicking on, and we eventually get, we've said this all season, the substitutions in terms of when we've brought them on and the contributions that they've made has been absolutely bang on. You know, Rodgers has been criticised quite a lot throughout the course of the season, and rightfully so. Let's not rewrite history. He had got a lot wrong this season, but certainly at this point, as he says, when we come alive, that sort of break, the split fixtures, he's pretty much got everything bang on with the time to bring on the substitutions, the personnel changes, and again, he does it once more. And our substitutions, they've either been coming on and have been involved in link-up play, giving assists or scoring goals. We've seen certainly in Adam Idah, but it's Bernardo that comes on at 78 minutes for Hatate. And I will say this again, I cannot believe that Hatate lasted 78 minutes of that game, because by this point, and I said this to you before we came on, whether you thought or think that Raskin's a good player, whether you think Cantwell's a good player or not, the fact that Cal McGregor had been booked on, he was out the game. He was chasing shadows. He was doing the best he could whenever he had the ball, but he was getting no assistance for these other midfielders around him. O'Reilly was just drifting about the game, going through the motions. There was actually times where he was getting the ball, he was receiving it, he was stopping still with his foot in the ball and wandering. There was no intensity there, and we needed something extra. The fact that Hatate managed to survive 78 minutes was completely surprising. But as soon as Bernardo came on, there was a wee bit of a lift, there was a wee bit of energy, there was a better forward pass, was there no?
Yeah. I was sitting, like I said, I had a few folk running the man cave, and my next door neighbour Brian, he touched on it. He was quite happy to see Bernardo coming on, and obviously I was telling him we'd been speaking about him in the podcast, and wasn't really 100% on the guy or whether we should sign him, and I said it doesn't really give us much more than what Hatate has, and boy was I wrong.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He comes on. He's obviously fresh legs. You know, we're deep in the game. He comes on just before the 80-minute mark, but he just, as soon as he gets the ball, I think the interesting thing about getting Bernardo on is yes, he maybe doesn't have that sort of massive attacking style or want to play the risky pass that you would have got out here on it. Hatate, he maybe doesn't have the same twinkle toes that are on it O'Reilly could get, but I think that it would have reassured Cal McGregor. It certainly reassured me when it came on, because you had Cal McGregor, who, as I say, was chasing shadows, just trying to mop up absolute nonsense and be everything because those around him were giving him no help. He would have at least known that when Bernardo came on, yes, he can break up play, he can do the sort of dirty stuff quietly and, you know, without any fanfare, but he'll also try to push on. And that's what we did start to see for him, because Rangers were actually putting on. They should see that it was deep in the game. But at this point, I was starting to worry we were going to see another VAR incident, we were going to see another dodgy situation where there was going to be some sort of, you know, call off or a sending off or something, because the cards were starting to flow out at this point. You know, we had some folk riding the lightning that were maybe on for a red card, and you could have smelled it in the air. But he started to break up the play about when Rangers were getting more on the ball. Guys like Raskin, who had been getting on the ball more, that had been forcing the issue for Rangers a bit more, they started to become a wee bit quiet, and that was because of Bernardo, as I say, he's just been in there and just doing a quiet but industrious enough job.
Yeah, he kept going forward as well, which I thought was decent. Every time he got the ball, it wasn't trying to play it to the side or play it back or whatever. He wanted to push. He was getting his head up as well, and do you know, it was nice. Obviously, we were struggling in there, and you touched on it with Hatate and O'Reilly and whatever else, and it was nice to see somebody get the ball and actually drive with it. And I feel like the guys up front, like your wingers as well, it freed them up more. They were starting to push a wee bit more, and they were starting to press down the wings, and you'd say before the pitch was quite tight, seemed to open everything up. As soon as he get the ball, everything just opened, and it seemed to be, for me, he was the player that came on and actually, we know he made the difference now, but yeah, he made a difference in the actual opening up the play. Essentially, that for me was the big turning point.
And that's the thing. I think with the substitutions, and even just something as simple as this, when you grow, we talk about the effects of substitutions coming on this season, and they're making an absolute telling contribution to games. The introduction of Idah, the introduction of Bernardo, you had two guys that are coming off the bench, they're low knees, they know the magnitude of it, they have contributed in this sort of running quite significantly, particularly Idah, and they absolutely came on with a mindset. Obviously, we get Kuhn, he got introduced to the game as well. I thought he was floating about a wee bit. He was still showing a wee bit more energy than perhaps what we had seen from our wingers elsewhere as well. But the guys coming on off the bench, they looked like, do you know what, we've got 10 minutes, we've got 15 minutes to win this. The energy was there, the fight was there, and as I say, even just simple things like Big Idah getting up and seeing his face, and there was a real fight. We knew that we had to do something, and you just get a feeling that these guys wanted it a wee bit more other than the Rangers guys that get brought on the pitch.
100%. Like you said, these two guys are probably fighting for a position at Celtic. They don't know whether they're going back to their parent club or whether they're going to get bought by Celtic. I know by listening to Big Adam, he's a Celtic fan. He's an Irish lad, as he said. He's been brought up loving Celtic. He would love a move to us. So I feel like he come on with a bit of bite about him, a wee bit, something to prove. really, after his last performance, because no doubt he'll have heard the podcast and me calling him out and stuff like that. Bernardo, for me, again, he was one that we spoke about and touched on and hadn't really done enough. Somebody had said before that he had, was it 2 assists and a goal in the Glasgow derbies. When it comes down to it, you know what, that's decent. And it's everything else he's done for me that wasn't quite enough. But yesterday showed for me a little bit what I'd be looking for from him in a more
this is the thing,
position. I'd be looking for it.
As Paddy's saying there, Bernardo and Idah, they had the combination. They were a vital combination in the game to make it 3-2. And as fate would have it, 90 minutes deep in. This is what, for me, as a fan, we talk about moments. We talk about taking an opportunity. We talk about taking the game by the scruff of the neck. That is what, Bernardo done. And that's what our midfielders had really struggled to do this whole game. Dare I say it, it was Cal McGregor-esque. He picks the ball up roughly about the sort of centre half, it's halfway line, and I think it's Raskin tries to dirty him. It's an easy one. It could have been easy for him to just fall over and get down cheaply and look for the foul, but he rides the tackle. He's got the determination. He's kicking on, and he makes his way just the edge of the box. And see when he unleashes that shot. See when I've watched it back. It's a rate of knots. I mean, it is some strike. Very similar to, do you remember the Hattati goal against Hearts, where it was like a rocket leaving his foot? And at the time I thought, it's a shot to nothing. But not until I actually got back to the house and I saw it on the TV. He strikes it so clean with some pace and some force. And there's a wee dip in the movement and it falls. I think, could you say the goalkeeper there should do better? I don't care, but I think it just catches him in the movement and it's just enough to parry it. But as all good strikers do, there's Big Idah. He's making an intelligent run. They were trying to shout for offside, but he's well on. He's making the run as the ball leaves and he just sweeps it out underneath Butland. Helpless. 1-0. 90 minutes, mate. The place is going wild.
Aye. The man cave was going wild as well, I must say. What a strike. He's hit it with a fair bit of power. Could the keeper do better? For me, probably. You'd expect your keeper to catch it, but yeah, their player of the season parries it, and the big one, like you said, was jogging on the spot, ready just to tuck it away and send Hampden into absolute chaos. How many rows did you end up down after that goal?
I was actually, I think I was 2 behind, and I was, I must admit, I'm in a bit of agony the day with the old shoulder. I had to get myself back in the swing earlier on. So I turned round as you do, and I was jumping, and the guy behind me sort of scooped me up, and the guy up behind me pulled me up, and so I was absolutely agony. I was like, oh Jesus Christ, that's the last thing I read. But absolutely worth it. But no. We talk about scenes, we talk about limbs, as they say, the young ones say. I mean, what a time to do it. What a time to hit the death nail for them. 90 minutes, so you've got nowhere to go for that. And you could just see it. As soon as that goal went in, deadly silent at the other end. Yeah. And dare I say it, a few folks started walking away.
Surely not. They don't do that. They don't walk away. I've heard that so many times. I'll tell you what did the ref add? Was it 8 minutes?
8 minutes. But there's a good point there as well. Bernardo's shot is really the only save that Butland had to make. And he didn't really quite make it, did he?
I know, exactly. He's parried it out to the big man, jogging on the spot and just...
See what I thought? And we talk about, obviously, it's all about ourselves, it's all about the Celtic, but we've spoke about how their manager and how their players and all that have got a wee bit of a free ride. Do you think with a wee bit of a revisionism of this season, yes, Butland has gained them many points with some good displays, but equally, like that yesterday, he's cost them a lot and all, isn't it?
Of course he has. At the end of the day, he's no world beater. The guy's had a couple of good games. He's been decent. He's been probably their best player, but that doesn't say much because they've been garbage as well. Like you said, they've beat people who they were expected to beat. Have they beat us? No. And that's what it comes down to. You could win every single game of the season, but you don't win the Glasgow derbies, and you're not going to win the league. It's as simple as that. The big man, he's played all right. He's a decent enough keeper. Do I think he's outstanding and he's got them everything? Nah. For me, he's just average. He's just an average keeper. And the boys in the chat there are saying I'd offer 5 million for him, the Mora. I probably just stick him in the reserves just because we can.
Well, do you know what? I've had this get around. I don't know how serious folk are about it and turning around and saying about I would sign Butland. I would have probably signed Butland before he went to Rangers, but I would give them nothing. I'd give them 0 millions.
Aye.
Let somebody else take them and offer them money. They're getting nothing out of us.
No,
They're getting nothing out of us on the pitch. They're going to get nothing out of us off the pitch and all.
Yeah, that's it. Give him a couple of nails for the coffin. That's what I'd give them. There you go. Have that.
Well, it was Big Idah that put the final nail in the coffin there, and we get a surprise. Were you surprised that it was 8 minutes? Was it another? Oh my God! Let's do everything we can to wheel it out. Well, we're talking about these referees that are so corrupt that were out to sort of fit up Rangers, but
surprised it wasn't 10.
8 minutes added on was quite a lot, wasn't it?
Aye, I thought it'd been more. I thought Beaton and Walshy would have been sitting there going, right, how can we do this? Working out a bit of Fergie time. Aye, 8 minutes, I thought, right, here we go. Something's going to happen. They're going to just go, everybody up front, go for the chaos ball. And that was it. When they just tried to batter you for the last wee bit.
Yes, and the frustrations then started to come in because I don't know if anybody noticed it, but John Lundstrom went for another shot at that getting sent half title on O'Reilly, but fortunately O'Reilly was smart enough to ride that tackle.
Aye, I seen that one. He just jumped out of the way. Aye, I don't know what the big clown's up to. Just a mug. He's not a footballer. And the Rangers fans will probably tell you that as well. They're all screaming for him to leave, along with a load of the other serial losers that they've got in the club. For me, it was just icing on the cake.
Apparently, it ended close at 11. Is that true?
Oh, 100%, mate.
I'm on it. I don't feel like I'm turning in the stands, but Jesus,
I reckon it was kicking the ass off of 10 at least anyway. I remember sitting there, Joe confirm it as well. It was another one of the moments.
There was an interesting one here that was put into the chat, and I've saved it here. The VAR check in the 4th minute. A wee bit of time killing. That was what I believe it was. That not there was a check for potential, was it serious foul play, and they went for a wee 4 minute added on situation.
Was it?
Yeah, there was a VAR check and the added on time, and obviously that helped manifest it, get it up to 8 and then closer to 10 or 11 as some are saying. But no, not too bad for a couple of referees that are trying to fit them up.
Aye, that's it, exactly. As I said before, I'll say it again. We'll probably say it next season. Always cheated, never defeated. Well, and when all was said and done, mate, we got ourselves over the line with the trophies in the bag and some of the sweetest ways. For those that are interested in it, let's take a wee snapshot and have a look. So, if you're into that kind of thing, there's how it panned out. So as we said, so have you listened to Clement's interview?
Oh, I'm sure that they won the most shots on target title or whatever it was. Yeah,
moral victory was theirs completely. They were the better side. Poor decisions went against them. Their depleted team and things like that. Do you know what? Looking at that, it doesn't really. No, doesn't look like it, does it?
Two things, as I say, the two things are not the same. From that, as I say, we don't labour stats on here. The one that was interesting was they had over 11 corners and Celtic only the 3. So in terms of actual, as we say, is we had massive amounts of possession for possession's sake, getting our foot in the ball but not really doing anything with it. But then it's, split it. You could, put a fag packet under that. 4 shots in target each, 1 on target. 1 off target, we get 1 in the back of the net. Obviously, that's the most important. And a couple of block saves, that they'll use that to spin a narrative of a nearly situation, being unlucky, and whatever else way they want to sort of chop it up. But for me, it was very much the quality and the cream rises to the top.
Just about
when it came on, we had the better players to come on. Our substitutions came on. They impacted the game. Obviously, Bernardo taking the game by the scruff of the neck, going for that shot, and obviously Idah finishing it up with the strike there. In terms of the aim, there wasn't really too much. I looked at their team, and yes, they looked towards periods in the game where their manager's saying it. Yep, do you know what? They did have a period of maybe sort of 15, 20 minutes where they had most of the ball, and a lot of that was down to, as I say, our midfield not turning up, and particularly our captain being completely and utterly stifled. But these guys that they're going to be sitting there and giving it the next year FC sort of thing about your guys like Raskins, your guys like Cantwell, and even guys like Diamandi. Now, I'd come on this podcast before and said I thought he looked a tidy enough player, but see, yesterday, that boy's an absolute myth.
Aye. He should have been off. I tell you that. The amount of bookings that he had and the attitude towards the ref was absolutely ridiculous. He got away with absolute murder. I think he had about 3 or 4 fouls in the first half. And then again, he probably about 3 or 4 in the second half as well. I just thought he was, just a big idiot. He was just brutal. He just into everything, just kicking everybody that he could. For me, do you know what? Like you said, Steve, the cream rises to the top. Brendan, he's not been beat off of them yet.
No.
He's come out there again. And I said to my neighbour as well, sitting there, and I says, Callum McGregor's never lost a final. Whether it be from youth level all the way right through. Now, that's some statistic. That is absolutely unreal. And that just goes to show what kind of guys we've got in this club. We spoke about it previously. We call them serial losers. These guys are serial winners. These guys, and James A. Forrest might not have been outstanding yesterday, but he done the job. He had his shot. He caused a bit of carnage in there, and it's nice to see these guys there.
Yeah.
And Joe Hart as well. Somebody spoke about Joe Hart. It was lovely to see Joe keep a clean sheet, albeit after the push and the goal getting chopped off and whatever. But you know what? Joe kept a clean sheet in his last ever game. Look at that. Brilliant. The big man gets it. He knows what it means. And do you know what? He's become an absolute icon for Celtic. He really has. He's become such an absolute hero for the club. Everybody loves him. And he wears his heart on his sleeve. And you see that. And it was an absolute pleasure yesterday to watch him after that final whistle, to just see the big guy. And I watched his interview as well, and I think Neil Lennon offered him a stint at Rapid Bucharest, and Bruni said he could come to the seaside at Ayr as well. And I thought, that's absolutely class. That was brilliant. The big man just kind of shrugged it off. No, I'm quite good, lads. I'm all right. And do you know what? It was brilliant. It was absolutely amazing to see. Probably the last time we'll see a few Ayr players as well. Like we had definitely. But yeah, they talk about their rebuild and stuff like that. Aye, you can rebuild with your 50 quid. We'll do it with our 50 million, lads. Enjoy your night.
I think it was interesting. It was obviously a very sweet victory. We talk about how we managed to get over this, over the line this season, and it being one of the sweetest, one of the best title victories. Not necessarily because we've done it in massive style, but we bounced back. We had an 8-point lead. We lost it. We found ourselves 5 points behind. We then took it back to 8.
You see me now.
And exactly, in terms of sheer determination, it was fantastic this season. Really quite satisfying at times in a frustrating, nerve-shredding way, but so satisfying. And the same with that again yesterday. And this is what the takeaway for me is that, as you said before we came on, sometimes even when you play at possibly your worst, I'd go as far as says this is the worst we have played in a game against Rangers all season, hands down, in terms of the amount of players that we had that were off the boil, and still to be able to get it done, there's got to be something in that reassures you as a fan to know that you can say that we've got their number, but you can say no matter what the circumstances, even if the chips are down, we'll find that bit of quality. We'll find that extra edge to just push through. Whereas we compare and contrast, we'll listen to what our manager was saying. I believe it was all my players were getting pulled and all this kind of garbage. It's all nearly men stuff. It's always hard done by. And see, for me, as long as they continue to feel that they are that close, that there's just a wee tiny bit missing, that'll do for me, because let's not kid ourselves on here, and they should not kid themselves on. I know they can be delusional. Celtic will never be that bad again.
No.
It's just not simply going to be the case. So if they think that what they just saw there against Celtic yesterday is the benchmark for how close they are to Celtic, then they're in for a rude awakening, I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. If that's, like you say, when you can win at your worst, you're going to be champions at the end of the day, and that's it. If you had said to me, come when they lifted the Diddy Cup, if you'd said to me that we were going to be double champions, we we're going to win the league and the Scottish Cup, I probably laughed at you. I was confident about the league. I says it's a marathon, not a sprint. We'll go for it. And yeah, that was outstanding. A few folks saying there as well, obviously, about captains and stuff like that. I've just seen that there. As far as I'm aware, Callum's still going to be here. So for me, Callum's your captain. And it's as simple as that. I love Carter Vickers. He's somebody that we must build a team around. We spoke about previously people coming in and stuff like that. I would just like to say right now, if Celtic buy Adam Idah for the 6 million or whatever it is he's quoted for, I will be delighted. And I wasn't previously. I wasn't happy about it. I thought there were better options out there. But you know what? For me, is he better than Majowski? Maybe. I've seen flashes of what the big guy can do. He gets the club more than Majowski. He understands what it means to be a Celtic fan. And for me, you need that in there. You need people who understand what it means to play for a club this big. And I'd take him in a heartbeat. I really would. I think we need to get it done quick because I do think other people will be sniffing about him.
Yeah, definitely.
The Paulo Bernardo thing, do I think we should take him? If it's 5 million, which I think was quoted, I think he'd be an all right stand-in. I don't think he's the player that we need to replace Matt O'Reilly. I think he'd be an option off the bench. So if he's willing to be that impact player off the bench, which he's kind of been this season anyway, then I'd get him signed for that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Josh and I sat and spoke about these two, and we profiled the two guys on loan. I think, it's largely positive there in the comment section. Everybody seems to be really feeling the love for Adam Idah. It's been for me and yourself. We've sat here in this podcast and we've had discussions about him. We went from the sort of, absolutely red hot, he's brilliant, to that stage of doubt and saying, I don't know if he's necessarily shown enough. I think in terms of this season as a whole for his contribution, the big man's certainly got to be given his flowers. He's proven a lot of folk wrong. I'll hold my hands up and say, myself being one included, certainly when he came in and he was getting, mentioned as going to be a signing on that sort of late in the transfer window, I think it's safe to say we were all very underwhelmed. And rightfully so. Yes, he'd played for Norwich, had some experience, he'd played for Ireland, but when you actually saw, and I know you should never base people on highlight reels and videos, it was nothing that was tearing up trees. You weren't looking at it and going, my God, this guy, because what we were looking for, what we were crying out for was goals. Now, you were seeing a lot of nice hold-up play, but there was no goals in the videos. You're like, what are we getting here? We need somebody who's going to score goals. And I think that I'd have to agree that over the piece of this season, he's delivered this single-handedly a trophy yesterday. But his goals, the big goals in that stuffy game against Hibs, under pressure, the penalty, for example, the big turning point, the Motherwell goals, huge. The goal against Rangers, which should have been a winner in that one. The performance against Kelly. For me, on the piece, he has shown enough that, let's not kid ourselves on here. If it's 5 million... That's chump change, if we're being completely honest. Particularly when you look at guys that we've made mistakes on for 3 million, 3.5 million. You shouldn't be worried to go and spend 5 million on a player like that because, one, simply because he's based in the UK, he's got exposure through what he's done at Celtic and at Norwich. If, for talking's sake, I don't think it would, but just say you had him for a year and he just didn't work out. See, because he's already got that exposure in the leagues down south and that, you will get your money back on him. Whereas going and getting another or somebody from the continent and paying 3 million, 3.5 million, if they turn out to be garbage, that's just money you're pissing against a wall. So for me, it's risk-free with Idah.
Yeah, that's it. And Typhoon said there, Majowski or Idah, mate, no problem.
Well, here's another one. Why not both?
Both who? Well, aye, possibly.
Because
But do you know
we've
what
seen the
though?
way.
Kyogo's going to be our first choice striker,
Is
in
it?
my
But
opinion.
we've had
Aye,
this discussion. You know, I think that Rodgers sees that he's a fantastic player,
mhm.
but I think if Rodgers had Adam Idah for all of the season, I think he would have been seen on almost 50-50 split. I really think that
Yeah,
Adam Idah looks more to the kind of guy that the kind of way that maybe Rodgers wants to
Brendan plays.
play. So I
Aye,
wouldn't be
big unit.
surprised if we signed Idah, that you might find Kyogo's played as and when.
Yeah, well, aye. It's kind of stumped me a wee bit. I always just assumed that Kyogo's going to be our number one, and that Idah, if he was willing to be the second option, um, would be happy to come and sign for us, knowing that he's going to be an impact player off the bench, essentially. Having the opportunity to buy Idah and Majowski, buy them. I'll stop Majowski scoring against us at least. So nullify Aberdeen.
Well, I mean, we need to have a selection of
Aye.
strikers. Now, you could maybe argue the toss and say that Miovski and Idah are quite similar.
Yeah,
Yes and no. Yes and no. I think that Miovski very much reminds me more of, say, a Venegoor, a Hesselink type striker, where he's a big
aye.
guy, but he's kind of got
Yeah,
a decent touch on him, and he can find the net. Whereas Idah is, again, I keep using the term, he's more a hybrid for me. He's
yeah,
got all that sort of technical ability that you would maybe get for a smaller guy, but he's also wrapped that up with power and
aye.
pace. So I think if we look at having an option, so let's just say that was what we were going to end up when we had a Miovski, Idah, and Kyogo selection to pick from. That's a great. You've got the smaller guy that's more intricate, more
Yeah,
intelligent, more run based, but then you've got the guy who can be a battering ram but can
aye.
do all of that as well. And then you've just got the instinctive, deft touch
Finisher.
striker and a Miovski. So, and listen, that's what we should be looking at. Obviously, people would maybe look at certain people and say we should be aiming higher than Kyogo, we should be aiming higher than Miovski. Yep, potential, of course, but historically, Celtic have always had a good pool of selective strikers to pick through. There
Yeah,
should be no reason why those three couldn't be what we're sitting with the bench with. Why have it as being one good striker and then your other options are garbage like and what other plankton that you want to sign for somewhere else? If we want to start acting like we want to start being a big club, we need to start acting like it. We shouldn't
aye.
be fear. As Ange Postecoglou once says, it's not his job to keep players happy. You should be happy being at Celtic. But I think Rodgers is more shrewd. He's a wee bit more clever in that way, that he can
Yeah,
massage egos. And I think he would find a way to keep people happy and have
yeah,
a real depth of quality sitting on the bench as well as on the pitch.
yeah. And we know what Brendan's like, obviously bringing players on and progressing players' careers and stuff. Somebody'd say there as well about Bernardo, possibly giving him the chance and letting him progress. I think he would be a great project for Brendan to actually get his teeth into and let him push on a wee bit. We've seen what happened with Callum McGregor when Brendan came in the first time. Callum just became an absolute worldie at that point. If Brendan could actually push on somebody like Bernardo, and we get a chance of getting that young lad for 5 million, then that for me is an absolute no-brainer. I just feel like he's a potential 20 million in a couple of years if he pushes on. It could be the next Matt O'Reilly, it could be the next Tam Rogic. He's got
Well,
that about him. He's got the big kind of unit like Tam,
see, with
isn't he?
Bernardo, just to touch on him, obviously the last time we spoke, we were kind of sitting on the fence a wee bit. And when I spoke to Josh the other day and we looked at it, there's a lot of chat as well that if Celtic decide that they don't want to trigger that clause and take the option to buy him, that they would be looking to loan him out again to another big club or whatever that might take it up. And certainly, it's hard to tell. We utilised them in the Champions League, so obviously Rodgers saw something in that more
Yeah.
European style, and he played them in all 6 games. I certainly, at the time, folk were saying, is that something that's been written in the contract? I don't think they're stupid enough to commit
Nah.
to, yeah, I'll play a guy in the Champions League. That's massive games to take a risk on. So I think that's nonsense. I think he just enjoys them for that style. Now, we're going to be facing 8 games in the Champions League against 8 different teams. Certainly, if that's a Euro-style type of player that he wants, I think it should be something we're looking at. Now, it's always about money. We've sort of contemplated and says, if it's 5 million, is he shown enough to say, let's take him? We're saying that as if 5 million's a fortune. And I think that's what we need to get back into our head. Yes, we're going to have a crazy amount of money. That obviously doesn't mean that you go and spend it foolishly.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be squabbling about £5 million, because if you look at, as I said, the options that we've bought with guys at 2.5 or 3 million, they've been absolutely garbage. I would rather buy him for 5 million, knowing that you've seen a bit of what he could get out, and knowing there's a higher chance that you can mould him into that type of player, than get out and buy another 2 Yangs. You know, I know what I would take.
Aye, 100%. Somebody said that we should try and keep Matt. Obviously, if Matt O'Reilly wants to stay at Celtic, we will keep him. We will do our damnedest to absolutely keep that boy. But yeah, Bernardo for me, he's shown that. He has shown that he's got a bit about him. He wants to push forward. He wants to do a wee bit. And yeah, sometimes, like you said, it's better the devil you know. Spend 5 million on him than 3 million on a dud. And if obviously we can save with a goalkeeper, then that would be outstanding if we could bring in your man for.
I mean, if we just take a cross section of players that we could be made available to us, and that we've been linked to. I know it's early days, right? But let's just say that we were going to sign Bernardo. Let's just say we gave him the 5 million. Let's say we were going to sign Idah and it was 6 million, right? There's the guts of 11 million straight away. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yes, you then could argue the toss as we did when we signed Carter Vickers and Jota, that you're technically not adding to your team because we're already in situ, but that's another point for another, time. For me, if you look at that, that's the guts to say 11 million. I would take that. You're then talking about potentially Daniel Amarte, possibly 5 million, so you're up to 6 million, 16 million, but that's 3 great players. You then, if you look at the boy Aragovs at the left back position, maybe another 3 million, so that shouldn't have got to 19 million, but that's you now got 4 good quality players. Then if we look at the potentially one of the, where it's Matty Ryan or it's Castells, they're guys on wages. So if you've maybe spent 20 million there on 4 good players, I would expect us to be spending again double that, up to 40 million. So why not? If that's the starting point, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever why we shouldn't be doing that. And that's what we need to start forgetting. I says before to you, Celtic should be looking to raise the base level of their players to around that 4 and 5 million. So we shouldn't be, worrying or contemplating whether we can spend that on these guys.
I know. Now we know we've got the finances to do it, so why not? I do. And I kind of hammed and hawed about it, and I said, you don't have to spend 5 million to get a good player. We've shown that previously, blah, blah. But yeah, if you've got a player
the strike rate on these are unpredictable. That's the point.
And that's it. You look at it now and you've got these players and you go, do you know what? You're proven. These guys have done it. They've been there. You know what you're going to get. You're not buying an unknown dafty and bringing him in and hoping that he's good. You're buying a player that you can look at. And guys like Daniel Amarte, I mean, what a career he's had as well. The young lad you said, is it Fizet for Shakhtar? I haven't seen much of. So I can't really comment on him. Keeper Castells, Belgian keeper, getting kept out of the Belgian squad with Timo Courtois. Guys like him, I mean, come on, like, this is what we should be having in this club. We've always had a good keeper. We've always had somebody that's been, your keeper's been a big personality, and I think he would be as well. I think he'd be one of the guys to come in, and he's only, 32? He's quite experienced, and I think that he'd be a great asset to the club, I really do. And obviously I'd spoke about a few other goalkeepers and stuff, and I'll not bother mentioning any names. Everybody knows who they all are. But yeah, if we can get this boy Castells, if we can get him in the door, that'd be absolutely unreal. I say that, yeah.
Well, do you know what? That's the thing. I'm hoping, again, this is the thing about being a Celtic supporter, isn't it? We hope upon hope. I genuinely think, and again, it's based on simply nothing other than numbers.
Yeah.
Yes, seasons gone by, we've been in a very rude financial health where we've been, excellent, but it's always been at a stage where it's been just enough that they can say, but what if this, what if that? See, we find ourselves after, as I say, I keep saying it, I've said it 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 times now on this podcast, all that 20 plus years of hard work, graft, maybe too shrewd business, that has been cultivated 50, 55, 60, whatever it is in the bank now, that's been cultivated over the best part of 20 odd year. We're literally overnight going to be handed double that.
Yeah.
And that's before your 30 million or whatever it is you get into your season ticket books. That's before your Champions League package. That's before the 900 strips, the 25 training ranges and everything else that they flog you.
Now they've got a new double tap coming out. It's brutal.
Here's the thing. It's really at this stage, there is zero excuse, completely nothing, no excuse whatsoever. I want to see Celtic really forcing the issue here. I want them to be putting the foot down on the throat of the rivals across the city, because I can say 100%. It once and I can say it twice and I can say it with absolute conviction. See if the shoe was in the other foot, they would have no hesitations.
100%. We've said that previously. And do you know what? I say that as well, and I keep touching on it. Brendan, come back. He's not going to come back for nothing. He's not going to come back.
And here's the thing, just to jump on that. We know that they will be, yes, see if we were to sell O'Reilly for, say, let's just say 20 to 25 million. Obviously, I'd like more, but let's be cautious, as we always are.
Yeah.
It remains the point, and I think this is where I was talking to a few guys at the game yesterday about this. It's not cutting the cloth and sort of downsizing as a fan. We should be spending money, but I expect this summer there should be no reason, absolutely no reason, why Celtic shouldn't be going out and spending 40, maybe at top. I highly doubt it, but 40 million I'd say is a sort of safe estimation of where we'd be, right? Now, see if you were to sell O'Reilly for 25 million. In my opinion, that doesn't mean that because you've done that you then go and spend 60 million. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You know, you could still sell O'Reilly and still spend 40, maybe up to 45 million if you wanted to go completely mental, and have more than enough quality, far more quality than we've got right now. So that's sometimes where fans, I think, we can want our cake and eat it. Yes, I always say you want us to shoot for the stars. We should be aiming big. We should be thinking big. But if I were to say to you right now, Celtic will spend 45 million in the transfer window, and you might lose one player out of that, you would take it, surely.
Yeah, 100% you would. 100% you would. You wouldn't care what player it is in that squad either, because everybody's replaceable, let's be honest. Other than probably our captain. I'd exclude him for that. But yeah, any player's going for that kind of money, and we bring in 5-6 players for that kind of money, yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. I'm in.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that for us, we've got to just really force the issue this season. I think in the second half of the season, particularly after the post-split, there seems to be a lot of, you know, it feels like there's been a stress lifted off the manager's shoulders. I don't know if that was to do with the then disastrous recruitment team having left or whatever, but I just get a vibe in it, and it's based on nothing. But all that chat that the manager was saying previously about we need more quality, we need this, he seemed disillusioned. He seemed really disenfranchised with how things were going, and it was like that. It was like flicking a switch. It was almost like flicking a switch after they had announced that they were going to be leaving. And now when he's talking, and he's always been focused on the next game, and the job in hand. But when he has been asked been asked questions about spending and building, he's been making positive noises. It doesn't feel like it's lip service.
No.
You know, when he first came in at the start of the season, he was saying all the things he wanted to say, and it turned out he didn't get it. But I don't think he'd be foolish enough to do that again before the season's out if he didn't think it was going to happen.
Brendan's arse is on the line, let's be honest. He's come in, he's won over some fans this year again. Some probably still not. But like I say, he's got to progress this Celtic side. And I think he lost the dressing room kind of maybe halfway through the season when he came out and he said a lot of players aren't good enough, blah, 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 blah. We've seen a massive dip in form at that point, and that brought the other side of the city in a little bit. And for there, he's pushed on, he's progressed, he's got the best out of the players that he's got. Now, if he can get to bring in some of the players that he's got an eye on, or some of these players that he's identified, again, we'll push on. And if that's anything up was a 25 to 40 million or whatever we need to spend, give him it.
Mm-hmm.
Give him it.
No, I
Just
mean
putting money at him.
now it's just surmising, it's just fantasy talk, it's
Yeah,
hoping for the best. You know, we'll know in the fullness of time. I do think though we know that we need quality players. We've brought in Bernardo, we've brought in Idah. We know the asking price. You could
hopefully bring them
argue
in.
that,
Yeah,
well, that's what I'm saying. You could argue that they are quality players. And if they're going to be used as the benchmark by the manager of that's what I'm expecting for a quality player, then if he's saying he expects maybe 5 quality players, then if you work off that 5 million, then you've just got to work it out and do the math and sort of expect that that's where you're going to be. Hopefully we'll be pleasantly surprised, as I says, but we'll take it for there. But listen, we've went almost an hour and a half. It's been an absolutely cracking show. Thank you to every single one of you for taking the time to sit here and watch with us. You know, lots of good points coming through there. The chat's been lively. Everybody's been obviously still high on after the result yesterday, and that's it. But no, look, it's going to be interesting over the next few days. There'll be players getting back to their parent clubs. We'll be on the wind down. We'll maybe get a wee sort of snapshot, and it'll be interesting because as we go into the Euros, you'll obviously get the rumour mill starting to churn up, and we'll see what's going on. And there's a few players that'll be out there, and I'm sure our manager will be out there and he'll be having a look and trying to see what might be up for grabs, because in, you know, previous times gone by, this has been a good time to sort of eyeball players, Hunter.
100%. You go into a Euros or a World Cup, it's always a good chance to get an eye in there with these boys. You've seen obviously Alistair Johnson was at the World Cup, played brilliant, couple of cracking games. And then obviously it was announced he was coming to Celtic. It was like, yeah, fucking excellent. This boy's he's looking quite good. So going into the Euros, it's a good chance to keep an eye on these kind of unknown entities that make it into international squads, and take your pick for them. You get a wee boy that's at Dinamo Zagreb that's kind of swung under the radar, and you go, oh, wait a minute, he looks all right. He's an attacking midfielder, bring him in. And it'd be good to keep a wee eye on it, even if it's for our wee fantasy to go, oh, he'd be good to bring in, wouldn't he? Let's hope we get him, and then nothing happens and you're a wee bit gutted and you get somebody for Aberdeen or something.
We'll see. As I say, that's another curtain came down on a season. It's been great. It's been top quality in terms of the outcome for us. You know, yes, we went out of one of the cups early on, but you can't have it always. You know, there's a reason why trebles are that hard to come by, even though we've been spoiled with them. Not in an entitled way, but we've just managed to be punching well above everybody else's weight for a long time. But if you can't take a treble, then, well, a double, particularly when it's the two important cups, isn't it? They're the ones that matter, and you'll take that every day of the week. And here's a great point. Absolutely. And in case you haven't saw on our social media, you can rest assured that after tomorrow, I know that content and information and stuff's going to be a wee bit sort of quiet, but we will be back because you will be getting the Loyal Rumble Part 2. And I am sure that it is going to be absolutely on fire. And the conspiracy theorists are going to be out in force. Whilst we're celebrating, they're all fighting, aren't they? We saw it. Their managers pushing away Todd Cantwell. There's infighting. There's angry bears, as Chris Sutton once said. And pretty much won't much change there. We're in a good position, Paddy, aren't we?
It's beautiful, mate.
Get into the close season.
It's good. I'm looking forward to the phone in. I'll get out a wee listen tomorrow and listen to their tears over the radio. There's going to be a few meltdowns on there. You can just see it. Like you'd say there, you touched on the one with the TikTok getting pushed off of their manager. I thought that was a fitting end. It was a fitting end to the cup final. I thought that's just summed it up for me. That shows what's going on in there. It's beautiful. It's absolute carnage, and you know what? It's good to be on top, as always. So
it's good to be on top. It's
good
to be a Celtic supporter. It is good to be watching our rivals falling apart at the seams before our very eyes. But the main thing is, and I can rest assured that if the message that's been consistent all the way through the season, that's only continuing on, because we've got a manager. He's came back. He's managed to win over a lot of non-believers. He's managed to convert folk again, hasn't he? He's certainly been able to put a smile back in my face when I went through a wee stage of uncertainty. Paddy is positive as ever, and I'm sure as we approach into the summer, that focus that remains at Celtic, that's going to continue, because there's one thing that Celtic have got. We've proven it for the best part of season upon season in the past 20 odd years. Winning mentality.
Yeah.
That's going to continue in it, Paddy.
It's got to. We've got the players in that squad, and all we're going to do is just build the full squad around them. So, yeah, onward to next season. Make mine a treble.
But for now, it's going to have to be remaining a double. So we'll be back, as I say. Keep your eyes open. Thanks again for joining us. Well over 100 all the way through there to death. That's how it's just came up an hour and a half. It's been a long one, but sometimes it's got to be when you've got some success to talk about. And again, thanks to everybody for taking the time to join us. Enjoy your bank holiday tomorrow if you are still going to be fortunate enough to be off. Keep the celebrations rolling. I'll have another wee drink or two before hitting the hay. And thanks again to you for all watching. As it says, the community has been growing. Thank you very much. Make sure, if you haven't done it before you leave, hit that subscribe button. That means when those videos come out, that means when the Royal Rumble Part 2 drops, you will be notified and you can go on and enjoy some of the pain. And of course, there will be some pleasure there as well, because I'm pretty sure there'll be folk like myself and Paddy, not necessarily us, but of a similar mindset, phoning up just to remind everybody that there's a reason why we're champions, and there's a reason why we are double winners. So until then, take care of yourselves, and as always, hail, hail. See you later.
Hail, hail, boys.